welcome to another episode of Empower Apps. I'm your host, Leo Dan. Today, I'm joined by Antoine Vanderlee. Antoine, thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Thank you for re-inviting me over. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's been a while. And just in case there's like 2 or 3 people listening to this podcast who don't know who you are, because they live under a rock, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, totally. So I'm probably most known for my blog called Swiftly, where I write articles. I think since 2018 every week. I got my newsletter as well, Swiftly Weekly. And in my day-to-day job, I'm working at WeTransfer, where I'm a staff iOS engineer, making sure that everything mobile is as perfect as it can be.
How long have you been at WeTransfer?
It's actually gonna be 6 years this March.
That's awesome.
That's long, isn't
That's
it?
awesome. Yeah, I mean, in a good way though. Like they love you, you like them. So,
Absolutely.
that's fantastic. What was I gonna say? I love WeTransfer, by the way. If you're ever looking for a way, like they're not a sponsor or anything. So, just if you're looking for a really easy way to transfer a super big file, like it's the simplest way to do it. I find whatever Dropbox. I mean, I'll use Google Drive on occasion, but that's more for like
Hmm.
I think like if you have a shared folder, but like if you have just a file you want to send to someone,
Yeah,
like WeTransfer is solid, and it's just super easy to use.
yeah.
So
As long as the listeners know that it's not about money transfers. We get people applying for the job, and
right,
we ask them, why do you want to work for WeTransfer? And they say like, yeah, I've been using WeTransfer for years to transfer my money, and and I want to work for that company.
they do this in an interview.
They,
Oh
they
man, that's
they do that when
embarrassing.
they apply for a job, and I'm like, how can you transfer money if we don't even support it? So it's all about file transfers.
And NFTs, right? You can transfer NFTs, right?
Maybe.
You're doing that this year. Maybe
You
I was
never
being
know.
sarcastic. You don't never know. Assuming there's still a thing in 2023. Uh, yeah. So last episode, I gave my solo year in review. You wrote an article giving your year in review, and I figure we'd deep dive a little bit in our mutual year in reviews, but also kind of talk more because I didn't really talk a lot about the technical aspect of how things changed in the Swift and Apple world in 2022. Um, but before we begin, I'll just let you kind of give your quick thoughts on 2022 as far as being a developer in this space.
Yeah. So 2022 has been quite an amazing year. Mostly from a personal side of things, to be honest, because I became a dad in March, and I married my wife now in December. Altogether, quite significant event, so to say. But still, I had
Yes.
somehow, if I look back, what I achieved from the technical side of things with the releases of my side projects and such. Um, I can't really tell that I had such major events in my private life as well. Uh, it's been quite a crazy year. We had 2 Swift releases, Swift 5.6, 5.7, and I remember preparing a talk in June, 2 weeks after WWDC, and the idea was to um, cover a topic from WWDC that's kind of like the hot new thing to talk about. And if you look back at previous years, we had major releases in Swift Package Manager, Xcode Cloud, Async Await, Catalyst. Those were kind of like um, easy topics to pick for a talk if you want to do a talk about WWDC. And this year, I was like, well, what is the most obvious one to pick, right? Um, that was an interesting journey. I ended up doing a talk about opaque types, existential any, generics, and I kind of
Which
realized that
conference was this?
several actually. I did it at AppDevCon, French Kid. Um, yeah, quite a few, honestly. That's the thing with a talk, right? It takes a lot of time to prepare it, and chances are low that one visiting friends kit also visited AppDevCon, right? So
Yeah.
plus, if I do my talk again, it becomes better and better. And the last version, the last one I did was in Poland. Yeah, that was much better than the first version, I can tell. Yeah, but either way, if I
Um,
look back, it feels like really like a year with improvements, right? So um, improving the things that we already have, making them even better towards the road of Swift 6 that will hopefully arrive next year.
yeah, right, right. Trying to think what I've seen on Swift 6. Um, what was it? There was one thing I just saw recently that we'll get into it later when we talk about server side Swift stuff too, because that was a big thing a few weeks ago. But yeah, we also had big improvements to Swift UI, as far as opening up navigation and layout stuff. And then one thing one thing I didn't actually put on our notes, but just you talking about conferences, it's kind of here on the other side of the world, we don't have a lot of conferences. So, but that well, we do now, but last year, just the only conference I remember in the US was 360 iDev. And so we talked about in the last episode, they're ending that. But now this year we have, you know, a few more new ones that have grown. New York Swift,
Yeah,
Deep Dish. Josh is putting together Deep Dish, and then I guess Toronto is also coming back again. I heard that yesterday, so
nice.
that's good. Finally, North
Yeah,
America has some more conferences. So I kind of envy that you have them, but I'm glad we're growing more here on the other side of the ocean.
yeah, but
But
this is a good
yeah,
point, right? 2022 was the first year again that we had in-person conferences, or at least many of them, because the year before it was all
right.
online. And
Yep.
honestly, that didn't felt as good as the ones in person where you really get to meet people, hang out with them. Yeah, in terms of
Yeah.
conferences, it was a great year.
Do you think things are back to normal? Well, normal as they're gonna be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what makes it mostly back to normal is WWDC this year. If that's going to be as good as it was a few years back when it was in person, then I would say it's all back to normal. But I think the whole different way of working during COVID, um, you know, opened up doors for companies as well, but as well as for conferences like WWDC,
Right.
where they noticed, like the online format might actually work better. We get so many great videos that are shorter in time, they're more to the point. Everybody can watch them, everybody can reach them. But yeah, the one thing that I still missed, honestly, is like everybody from the community gets together at WWDC. I mean, that used to be the thing, right? You had parties everywhere. Every evening, there was a company hosting a party where you could go to and such. I wish that comes back. And if that comes back, then we're back to normal.
Do you think WWDC will be in person this year?
At the minimum, it will be like they did last year. But yeah, I'm not
Right.
sure about you, but at least for me, going all the way there for just one day, pretty much, that was a bit too much. And yeah, it's hard to say how it will be this year. Think
Yeah.
about it, right? If it's back to what it was, but with the videos like we are used to now, how will it be to be there every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, watching the sessions in person while they have the new format? I think that will be tricky. So they need to find a new format, maybe where you can watch the pre-recorded sessions in person there, kind of like a cinema or something. I don't know.
I think yeah, I mean the big thing is like Apple when they started WWDC, I don't know where late 90s maybe or early 2000s. They were a different company. They weren't the mammoth like biggest company in the world that they are now. And so like there's a lot of benefit to a lot of people to just do remote for like the base content of WWDC. I do like that they've stretched out. One thing that we've seen this year is we've seen more of the one-on-one appointments and the Slack Q&As, say what you will, but it's something. Where like things are more spread out throughout the year, and it's not just like here's 1 week where you can talk to an Apple developer. You have more. It's like I've talked about them. I've had a couple of meetings with folks at Apple, and that's been super helpful for me. Getting those appointments. It's not as good as like what it might have been when WWDC was totally in person, but at least we're able to do it more frequently, I guess.
Yeah, and but this one is interesting as well, right? Because in a way, you could also say it's better than how it was at WWDC. I remember,
Right.
especially the year that Swift UI was announced, there were so many big lines for questions about it. Um, if you look now, you can actually access all the questions that are asked by others in the Slack threads, right? So there are people compiling those questions in a GitHub repository, so you can look them up afterwards. But it allows you to gain insights that you would otherwise never see. And I think there might also be the downside that you can't really go in depth, share your screen next to a developer that works on the core data
Right.
framework or something. I don't know. Yeah, that those are still things that we miss. But yeah, I don't know. There's got to be a balance now, right? Like they need to find the sweet spot.
Do you think here's one? We're totally going not on our notes, but I figured I'd ask. Especially considering like there's been a lot of rumors about a certain Apple product that people put on their heads. Do you think we're gonna get any more in person press events for like say a March event
Yeah,
or a September event or an October event?
I
Especially with a
mean,
product like that. I can't see
yeah,
how like how do you show that off? I guess you could show it off in a video, but like it's such a product that you have to feel and interact and immerse yourself in.
exactly. So I guess they would really benefit from an in-person event, at least for press and media, which they did last year as well,
Right.
right? Like press and media was invited as well, I believe, for the keynote and such. So, um, but
Yep.
yeah, for developers, I guess as well, there must be like a developer kit or anything similar. It reminds me as well about the bowling game with AR when AR was released first, right? You could do a bowling game at WWDC, play against each other.
Right, right,
Yeah, those are the things you need to do in person. Yeah,
right. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I looked over your top articles, and if I remember correctly, you had an async await article that was really popular this year. You had a combine article that was popular this year. What was the other one? I can't remember now. Do you
I
remember?
think it was Jason handling
Okay.
just yeah
But
decoding
like
encoding.
yeah, right, like advanced decoding. But like it seems like a big thing had been that people were really interested in still in async await and combine. What's kind of your view of the relationship between those two and how they work in the ecosystem in 2023?
Yeah, this is a hot topic, so to say. Many people wonder whether Combine will still be alive in a few years, especially because we didn't see any major updates to the Combine framework in this year's WWDC release. I think the main point for me is that if you look at Swift UI heavily relies on Combine under the hood, right? Like things like the published
Right.
property or the state property, all those kind of property wrappers. Underneath, they use Combine. Observable object, they actually comes with a publisher in its definition. The object will change
Yep.
publisher. Um, so to me, it's very clear Combine is not going anywhere. And I think the reason they didn't update it this year is that it's quite mature. Combine is nothing new, right? Like we had Arc Swift, Reactive Swift for years. The whole reactive paradigm was already known or sorted out. So to me, it does make kind of sense that Combine was good from the get go in a way. Um, so how do they live
What would
together?
you look for if you were going to look for an update to combine? What would you look for?
Well, I guess if I look into the projects that I work on, we would
Mhm.
often visit the combine extensions Austria on GitHub. It's quite a popular one where it's mostly just convenience extensions on publishers. Um, but you can compare it to, Foundation comes with certain types, but you're still not completely fulfilled. So you write your own extensions on strings or,
Yeah.
or, or collections or such, right? Um, that's the same with Combine. I don't think I really am in a need for updates in the core Combine framework, to be honest. It's pretty solid. And yeah, so I didn't really expect something new there either.
I think like you kind of hit it on the nose though. Like what's kind of developed out of the community is kind of what we expect from Apple, because I'm in the same boat where I use Combine quite a bit, and I have the same extensions I have to put in all my apps because I need to do a particular thing, like like, oh, I want to return an optional, or I need to like silence an error and just return the value, so there's that, right? There's extensions on common combined methods like a map or a try map or whatever, or a flat map. But then there's also there's so we had, when combine came out, we got one for notification center, one for I know I'm gonna forget this, notification center, timer, and I feel like there's one other one I'm missing. Oh, URL session, maybe. I think we got three publishers
Hmm.
from older APIs. Um, but um, there's still a lot of older APIs that don't have like you have to like write your own combine
Yeah, yeah.
scaffolding for. Like for instance, I wrote a whole series of articles on core location and how to hook that up into combine. Health kit's a common one that I use where I have to do my own work to get it to work with combine. So I think, yeah, like you said, those are kind of the missing pieces where the community can fill those in. That's fine, but you'd think like Apple would kind of be like, hey, by the way, here's the Apple way to do it. You should use this way. Yeah, I kind of think that's what's missing in Combine. It's not it's not like the end of the world because obviously the community has filled that in, but if there's anything you would expect from Apple, it'd be those things. I mean, I do know they have what's going back to the whole thing about async await. They do I believe that there's some stuff like even HealthKit where they've moved some of that over to async await. So I find that interesting, whereas they haven't built like publishers for a lot of those older APIs.
Yeah, but I think this comes from the angle how Apple looks at use cases for Combine, right? Because if we really come back to your initial question, like how does async await live together with Combine? I think there's a certain use case for Combine that's not really logical to do with async await, but the other way around as well, right? Like if there's a constant stream of publishing values, you could use async sequence as well, but to me that reads much less naturally versus a combined
It's
stream of
more
values.
reactive.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it just a
Yeah.
lot easier to create like a funnel of operators that
Yep.
handle the value over time. Debouncing techniques, all those kind of things, and there is a repository from Apple that allows you to do all those kind of operations like zipping and all those kind of things, but it doesn't read naturally to me. Even the async sequence with the for loop, where the for loop can run and then it doesn't run for a few minutes maybe, and then it runs again. It doesn't feel natural to me because it's structured concurrency. So you expect it to go from top to down, but eventually it would reach the latest part of your code. And with async sequence, I feel like we're stuck somewhere. Whereas with
I totally
combine,
agree.
yeah, with
Yeah.
combine it makes sense, right? Because we're used to that paradigm of a stream of values
Right.
over time that constantly
Reacting like a
runs.
pipeline of a stream of data from multiple sources, or yeah, things like that.
Exactly. So I guess it comes down to, for me at least, like um, an async piece of code that goes from A to B, but it will go from the beginning till the end in one flow. Then I would use async await, um,
Yeah.
and that's how I use
Yeah,
it as well.
async await just to me it makes more sense when you have a single asynchronous operation that you're doing. Whereas, like, when you need to react to a stream of data or you need to manage multiple streams of data to multiple syncs, I guess, or published properties, then combine makes more sense. I think that's one of my gaping holes in knowledge that I'd like to fill this year is figuring out how async stream works and kind of
Yeah,
getting more of that perspective. But it seems like you're kind of in the same boat as I am, where it's like, well, we'll talk, jumped into group activities, and group activities is big into async await for managing stuff as it comes in. And for me, it doesn't look natural. Like, it doesn't. I still haven't figured out. Like, I get what's going on, but like you said, that for loop is just, it looks strange to me from what I expect from an async await process.
yeah, and but it's interesting what you say, right? Like you still need to wrap your head around, and it's something that you still need to figure out a bit this year. It could also very well be something we need to get used to. When I did my talk on existential any and opaque types, generics are now rewritten using like a sum keyword. Sum is equal to T, where conforms to protocol. It's like a shorthand that reads more naturally. It's in a way easier to understand. But at that point, I realized like if you're like a developer that developed for years, you're used to the generic syntax. Getting used to the new syntax of using opaque types seems odd because you're not used to it. But if you're starting today as an engineer on Swift and you read opaque types using the sum keyword, it might feel much more natural and you get used to it really quickly. And that might also apply to async await, where we are used to using combine in those cases. But if you're not aware of how combine works and you read about async sequence, you might find that really natural to yourself. And I find this fascinating, right? It's kind of like the tunnel vision we have because we're used to a certain pattern. But yeah, maybe it's sometimes good to step out of it, try it out, and see if it actually works better, and just accept
Yeah, I
that it's different. Yeah.
yeah, I totally agree. Well, let's jump into it. Let's talk a little bit about the way generics changed this year and associated types and all that stuff. We got the new any keyword. We've already had some came with Swift UI because they didn't want to have to like specify every single generic type, and it makes sense in that case with our sum view. But any is something different. You want to explain the difference, and how use what purpose I guess it serves?
Yeah. Yeah. So the reason there's no Swift 6 release is because the Swift team is still working on like like the final pieces of memory safety. Or basically, they want to let us develop without thinking about all the difficult things of memory management and threading and all those kind of things. So we got async await, we got existential any, we got opaque types. All those pieces over time will make us move to Swift 6 gracefully. Existential any, the any keyword, completely lowercase, in a way is not something new. What it forces you is to think about the fact that you're using a protocol that can be of any kind of type. In other words, for the compiler, it's hard to predict what type it will be. So it can't do any memory optimizations or heap memory optimizations accordingly. If we take the body of a SwiftUI view where we have to return some view, the compiler will be able to determine the exact type at compile time. It will be some VStack or maybe a text element. And because it knows that it's going to be a VStack, it can optimize memory allocation for it and you get a better performance. So it's really about, if you need to use any protocol, that should be like a sign, like maybe I can use opaque types instead and be more precise about the type that's going to be used. You'll also get type relations because the compiler knows which type it will eventually be. And yeah, you get a better performance overall. That's a really short summary of what it
That's
is.
Well, I never heard the memory allocation story. That's really interesting. Like, that's a big reasoning behind the any keyword. I started using it and then
Mm-hmm.
I ended up getting stuck in a lot of places and ended
Mm-hmm.
up going back to just using um what's it called, constraints on my
Yeah.
types and sticking with the old way. So I'm kind of in
Hmm.
that boat where it's like the any keyword I don't understand, because I'll use it and then the compiler will be like, yeah, you can't do this thing because it's an any. And then I just go back to using generics and where constraints and things like that. Like, how have you found, what have you found the convenience of the any keyword, and where have you found it useful?
Yeah. So the tricky part for me is that um, so Xcode 14 will suggest you in places to use any keyword as well. While in many of those cases, you could actually use some, and with that gain a better performance. And to get back to the performance, it's a really small hit. I don't think you will really notice it. I can send you a link on Swift forums where it's explained in a bit more detail for those that are interested.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, nevertheless, I didn't really use any that much yet. I went over the code base that we transfer, and what I did is I was looking for kind of like those type erasure types where um, we had an any experiment type, which would kind of like
Yeah.
type erase the actual experiment, but it would allow us
Yep.
to pass that through throughout the code base. Yeah, we could now replace that with the lowercase any, and then just reuse the experiment protocol type that we had. I
Okay.
think another big improvement is I don't know this error by mind, but if you see it, you recognize it for sure. If you had an associated type in a protocol and you would use it as a generic, you would get like, you can't use this protocol because it has self constraints, something like that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right. Yep.
it felt like, why isn't this working, right? Like it should just work. And it's what they literally did in the Swift session. They did like, it now suddenly works, right? Um, they removed that constraint, and I think that opens up more doors than we realize because it now won't just naturally work. You don't really realize that constraint is gone when you use it, but it will, yeah, allow us to write more optimized code, I think.
I have like this talk in the back of my head about how to use associated types and generics, and how they work, because they're really useful. But yeah, I can see a lot of novice and probably even intermediate Swift developers just being like, screw it, I don't want to deal with it, because of, like you said, you get things like that
Yeah,
where it's like the self, it's like you can't use it, and yeah, I totally understand where you're going.
yeah, and
Um,
but this
cool.
is a good
Go
point,
ahead.
right? Like for those listening that are like intimidating by the fact that there's generics and there's opaque types, existential any. I think it's really important to know that these are just tools in your tool set that you could use, but it's definitely not mandatory to use them. You can write
Yes.
the same code
Yes.
solutions without generics. It's a bit more duplicate code, less reusable maybe. Yeah, but in most
Yeah.
cases, that's more than fine.
So let's talk about one of the apps. I think you debuted it this year. Is Stock Analyzer. You want to talk about your experience with that?
Yeah, yeah. So um, before Stock Analyzer, I always had that eagerness to release an app on the iOS App Store that's not per se developer related. That's more for the bigger crowd, and also an app where I can really jump on new features whenever WWDC comes with a major iOS update. And last year, January, I happened to start looking into stock investments. And naturally, I started to learn about all kinds of ratios like price to earnings and all those kind of new metrics that I didn't really understand. And the last thing I wanted to
Hmm.
do is read up on them every month when I did my monthly investment, right? So um,
Okay.
I guess I started with like an Excel sheet, like everybody does when you start investing. And I quickly realized I need a tool, and I want that tool to tell me like, okay, this is a good price to earnings ratio, right? And that's when I started thinking about an app which turned out to be Stock Analyzer, which gives you like a score from A to E whether or not the ratio is good. In theory, if everything is an A, meaning everything is green, you should buy that stock. That's the idea. Um, but yeah, I'm very much learning stock investment, and Stock Analyzer is kind of like a nice tool on the side that I can use for both my stock learning as well as building new features like lock screen widgets and those kind of things last year.
What did you learn out of the experience building an app for a wider audience that you didn't know before you started?
Well, it's quite painful actually. It's a stocks app, right? And in a way, I'm advising on finance. And it turned out that Apple is not really willing to promote or feature apps that are in that sector. So somewhere mid 2022, I realized that, which was disappointing. Um, but that's kind of like a side story, right? Um, what I guess what I learned is that if you build up an app nicely with modules and such, I got another app, RocketSim, which is also built using the same modules. Um,
Mhm.
it allows me to move really fast, and the lock screen widgets and the other widgets I built it quite fast because I had all that code ready to be reused in packages. Um, I wouldn't say that it's per se a learning from Stock Analyzer, but it's at least a learning that I take with me that for personal side projects, it pays off even more to have those packages, your own kind of modules. It's called the Swiftly SDK, but
I'm totally like on board with that. Like all of my apps now are just basically a bunch of Swift packages connected together with like minimal code in the actual app base. So yeah, it's become easier and easier over the years as Swift Package Manager has matured quite a bit.
yeah, and you need to be prepared for whatever comes next year, right? Like it's very likely that we will get another extension, and you want to reuse that API layer, right? And if it's all
Yeah,
in your main project, you need to go over each file individually, and then to the target that you created. It's painful to
yeah,
maintain. Whereas if it's a package already, just include a package, and you can go ahead and reuse it.
yeah, totally. Let's talk about your other big app that you've been. I mean, I don't know how old it is, but RocketSim. How long have you been working on RocketSim?
Yeah, I think 2018 was version 1.0, which was a really
Okay.
simple status bar app where you could execute deep links. Very basic.
What was the big? What did you introduce? I guess this year, in RocketSim, and how has that experience been? Just as somebody in the same space. Excuse me.
Yeah,
As someone in the same space who's been building dev tools, what kind of have you learned through your experience with RocketSim?
yeah. So first of all, I'm super fortunate to be able to build a developer tool while I also have Swiftly targeting developers, right? So I'm using GitHub for bug reports and feedback and such because I know I got developers. They know how GitHub works. That's super convenient.
Yeah.
Um, it's a super fun project, to be honest. I'm building like it's a simulator tool, right? So you can see like a floating window next to the simulator, and it provides you with all kind of extra features like recording with touches, recording with landscape support, with device bezels. You can compare design on top of the simulator. Um, over the years, I started to adopt more and more features, also based on user feedback, because many developers, they develop every day, and they find themselves doing repetitive tasks, realizing like, hey, I, I can improve this flow, and it should be great if it's in RocketSync. Why it's super fun is because I'm often going into Xcode.app, and I run through all those directories inside the Xcode app, and eventually I found out that the simulator is built out of slices. So it's a funny story actually, because the device bezels feature in RocketSim is actually rebuilding the simulator using the slices that are in the Xcode.app file. So I got like a Swift
Oh,
UI
nice.
view that's using all those slices, which also means that if a new Xcode version is out, I directly support the new simulator because I'm just reusing what they use. It's like an info.plist file, and
Mm,
I don't know. It's super
nice.
fun, and yeah, because I have the design comparison feature, I know exactly where the screen of the simulator is on your Mac screen, and I can do all kinds of things there. which is why I released RocketSim 8 in May with a grids and a rulers version where you can show a grid
Nice.
on top of your app, show rulers to align elements. And yeah, as we speak, I'm close to releasing RocketSim 9.0. Super excited about that one, where you can test push notifications and deep links using so-called quick actions, which will show next to your simulator. So you can directly click on it, and the push notification will show up, or the deep link will be executed, which opens all kinds of new features.
Is RocketSim on the App Store?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Sandbox
Has it
enabled.
always been on the App Store?
Sorry.
Has it always been in the App Store?
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
I think I didn't really want to go that route of having to promote it myself. Plus, it feels more
Okay.
secure if it's in the App Store. That was kind of
Yeah.
my
Yeah, totally.
feeling behind it. And I had a moment where I tried to switch it out of the App Store because I was just annoyed. Um, it's really hard to support a simulator tool when you're sandboxed, right? You need to use
Yeah.
SimCTL. I need to ask access for all kinds of folders. Yeah, and if you're not sandboxed, that opens up the doors. But then you
Right.
still need to manage updating using Pedal and all those kind of tools, which was
Yep.
quite a pain. So I quickly stopped.
Yeah. One thing I want to talk about is that you are either this year or next or last year you worked on doing team licenses. Speaking of the App Store, how does that work with RocketSim, and what, like, how does that even work? I don't even understand how you could do team licenses through the App Store.
Yeah, so the App Store doesn't support it officially, right? So what how it basically works, I'm using Gumroad, and Gumroad comes with a license API. And
Okay.
how I compare it is that you have a Netflix account and you bought that account on Netflix.com. You install the iOS application and you log in. You're already premium. You didn't purchase it through the App Store. It's kind of the same with the license implementation, where the license key can be activated, and it will use the Gumroad API to validate that accordingly.
Okay. So basically, where you have in-app purchases, there's a way to activate the
Yeah,
license via Gumroad, more or less.
exactly.
Okay. Do you like working with Gumroad? Did you find it like easy to
Yeah.
work with, or
Um, yeah, I think I looked at different options, and Gumroad was just most known to myself. I do
yep?
believe they changed their pricing this year, which isn't really in many favor. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It works out for me, and they had a nice API that's simple to use. So yeah, for me it worked out.
Yeah, we had Jordan on the show, and he uses Gumroad quite a bit, and
Hmm.
we never, you never think about Gumroad for software necessarily. It's usually books,
Yeah,
but the way he uses it is really novel, and cool. So yeah, I was super curious about your team licenses on Gumroad. Um, did you buy a new phone this year?
I did not. No, no.
Okay.
No, no. I was happy with my phone. I think it wasn't significant changed enough for me to say like, okay, I'll buy a new one. Did you?
Uh, no, no, I didn't either. I have an 11 Pro Max, and other than the battery, it's fine, totally fine. Well, the reason I wanted to ask, not just because it's what we ask on shows like this, but like, um, you did widgets with Stock Analyzer. Did you look at anything with like live activities or the dynamic island, as it's called, with either of your apps?
Yeah, I did have like ideas for maybe showing the stock price constantly or something, but it didn't really felt like really like an added value. The thing with side projects, there's only so much you can do, right? So you need to pick your battles. And for me, live activities wasn't really worth my time and effort in terms of like the return of investment. Um, if I were to have like an app where it made total sense, like it does for an Uber or something, yeah, and then I would probably also find more reason to buy that phone as well.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like Stock Analyzer is much more analytical
Hmm.
than just like, oh, I'm constantly looking at the stocks and figuring out how to stay ahead.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I totally agree, and I'm in the same boat where it's just like, is it worth my time? Like, will it extend my app store exposure? I guess, or will it be useful to the customers? Like,
yeah.
that's kind of the questions you have to ask when you have finite amount of time.
But that's the reason you could do it, right? Like to jump on that boat of the September official release of iOS 16, be part of all those lists where you'll be listed because you support lock screen widgets or those kind of lists. Um,
Right.
but yeah, that's where I realized that I'm not going to be featured soon because I'm a financial advisor. So yeah,
Yeah.
that
So
intent was lost. Yeah,
yeah, live activities is not going to change that.
no,
Um, One thing about I wanted to touch on, just jumping back on Stock Analyzer, is you want to port it to the Mac, the iPad. Did you say TV in the? I don't know if you said TV, but you wanted to do a multi-platform app with
yeah.
Stock Analyzer. What's your plan for that, and how does that work with the way you've architected the app already?
Yeah, so I think the biggest question here is like, so apps are often iPhone only because they're still validating their concept, right? They're still finding out where they want to be. And if you expect big UI changes, you don't want to do that on all those platforms. You kind of want to know, like, okay, this concept works, and I can now focus on making that optimal for iPad and macOS as well. Um, I guess for me with Stock Analyzer, first and foremost, it was about building out the concept, validating that users want to use it, and not spending all my time on just adding iPad or macOS support. First, spend all my time that I have, if I even have the time to work on Stock Analyzer because of all the other things that I do. Um, Focus on adding extra ratios and financial data and those kind of things. So for this year, I believe that I'm at a point where I can start thinking about it. And how it works from an architectural point of view is that I got a few options. I can use Mac Catalyst and I can use Apple Silicon. I looked at Apple Silicon and it didn't really felt that that was the way forward. I could also use AppKit, but I think in the case of Stock Analyzer, it's going to be like a window app as well, right? It's not going to be like a status bar app, which is harder to manage when you use Catalyst. I think it makes total sense to use Catalyst combined with an iPad app and build those two together. And another thing, Hida, I'm not sure if he's gonna watch this. Hida is a big favor of WatchOS applications. He's a friend of mine, and he pushes me constantly. You need to build a WatchOS app. So that's another thing I want to explore because if you have widgets, it should be fairly simple to at least add
The
complications and
complication.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that could be kind of like a nice quick win.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing the progress and story on that this year. Um, let's see. Do you want to talk about server side Swift?
I don't know much about it to be honest, so it will be really general and I don't know.
Okay. We'll save that for the next episode then, because in the next episode we'll have Dave and Sven on who run the
Okay,
Swift package index,
yeah,
and
better.
they know much more about it. So I totally agree. That's fine. Anything else you want to talk about? I guess before we close out.
Um, Maybe yeah, I don't know. Maybe looking ahead to 2023, that could be something.
Yeah. What are you? We'll probably have a new OS, like a totally new platform. It's looking like. What's your? How about what's your wish list for this year?
In terms of features, you mean, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. For
Um,
developers.
yeah, for developers, I I think it's like I had the same question last year, and I already found it hard to answer. I think the only thing I could really think of was um, something I'm constantly open for is a replacement of core data, and last year I had the insight that it will not be a replacement, but an alternative, because I don't really think they want to do, like an official migration from core data to Swift data or something. That's going to be super risky.
Yeah.
So if you make it like an opt-in where developers need to do that themselves or something, I think it's more logical
Well,
or
that seems
realistic.
to be the pattern too with a lot of their stuff, whether it's migrating to Swift or migrating to Swift UI.
Yeah,
Usually it's opt-in type thing with compatibility, some sort of way to have the two talk to each other, I guess.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So, but other than that, I'm quite fulfilled. I don't know. I think I also have so much on my roadmap already to work on that I'm kind of like, I'm not waiting for anything. I've got enough to do. So I don't know. How about you? Do
Yeah.
you have anything that you expect or hope for?
What I hope for, just kind of bug fixes.
Hmm.
In the last episode I talked about the issues with my Apple's, like with my Mac Studio, weird little quirky issues that I kind of don't expect of a machine like this. I hope Xcode gets better.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I've been having issues where it'll show me the error and then it'll hide it right
Mm.
away, and I'll have to like clean and then build again, which can take a bit longer. Um, I hope improvements to Apple Watch development. We have this massive new watch, and people still have issues developing on it. So I kind of hope we get some improvements in that way. Like even just, and I know it's not Apple style, but just kind of revealing a little bit like behind the curtain what's going on when an issue does come up, so that we have better ways to work around it. Um, I mean, I think that's kind of it. Like I feel like they really push features a lot, but at the same time,
Yeah.
just sometimes basic stuff I run into issues with. That would be my wish list.
Yeah.
Like so,
Quality of life
yeah.
improvements.
My prediction, yeah, I mean, my prediction is probably we're gonna get the thing that we're gonna put on our head probably in the next year. I'm not so sure it's gonna be a hit, but maybe it's gonna be a slow thing like the watch where eventually it picks up. I still don't. I don't have one, so I don't understand the appeal of them. But whatever, we'll see. Um, I think that we'll probably get more Apple Silicon stuff. We'll probably get a Mac Pro this year. Um, yeah, I don't have a lot of predictions this year. I mean, it does seem. Well, we'll talk about the next episode. It does seem Apple is really putting their weight behind server side Swift. They seem to be using it. Seems to be used by a lot of companies. It seems like it's really mature now.
Yeah.
And I think that'll continue to happen. But of course, we'll talk about that more in the next episode.
Yeah. And you'll
Um,
also talk
but
about Swift
it
package
seems like
management.
it's for real. It's not something for hackers and people who are just interested in quirky stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
what do you predict? I guess.
Yeah, well, you just reminded me, and you'll talk about that with Dave and Sven. The package registry, which is something that's on its way. But um, one thing I kind of run into lately is that things like Firebase, for example, right? It's a big repository with many kinds of packages, and if you include that in your project, the whole Git repository is cloned. Um, Even though you only use like maybe one of those packages, right?
Yeah.
And you can sort that out. There's like a open source solution where you use binary targets, but still
Yep.
it feels odd. So I think if we have a package registry, it's naturally solved, and that will make things much faster in terms of Swift Package Manager. So I don't know. I really hope that that kicks off this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Anything else you want to talk about? We talked about a lot.
Yeah, we went a lot of routes, so I think it's good like this. I'm excited for this year to come, and I'm looking forward to release RocketSim to everyone, and hopefully see everyone at WWDC in person.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Antoine, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me over once again, and already looking forward to coming back in the future.
Yes. Yes. We'll definitely do that. Where can people find you online?
Yeah,
as if
I
they
think
don't know already.
I'm one of the few that's still trusting Twitter. I also don't want to leave behind my big audience there. So yeah, you can find me on Twitter at TwanNL, TWANNL. I'm pretty sure you'll be able to put a link in the show notes. And yeah,
Yep.
otherwise, yeah, follow my newsletter. I think that's the best way to stay up to date on everything that I do, while you also stay up to date on everything in the community.
And we'll also have links to all the stuff we talked about today and some of the articles you've had. So, yeah, thank you again. People can find me on Twitter at LeoGDion. My Mastodon, because I have to say that now in 2023, is at LeoGDion at c.im. You can also find me on LinkedIn. If you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe, please. Share it. Let people know about this great episode. And also, if you're listening to this on whatever podcast player, I'll ask every episode, please review and share with others. Happy New Year to everybody. Welcome to 2023. And I look forward to talking to you next week with Dave and Sven on the Swift Package Index, server-side Swift, Swift Package Manager, all that stuff. So post your questions as soon as you can. Thank you so much and talk to you later. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.